Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review for Reacher. This is a TV series based on the first novel in the Jack Reacher series of novels by Lee Child. Lee Child? Is it Child's? Child? Whatever. Hey, look, I was a big fan of the first movie starring Tom Cruise. A lot of people really ragged on it, like particularly the people who are fans of the books, because Tom Cruise isn't like 7 foot tall, whatever, and 3 foot wide. I don't really care. What I care about is a good movie, and what we got with the first Jack Reacher movie was a damn good movie. Christopher McQuarrie was just on point with his script for that. And I do think, when I look at things like Letterboxd and IMDb, the scores for that film are seriously lower than they should be. Really great film, that first Jack Reacher film. Second one, not so much. I think Edward Zwick, really great director, but the script just wasn't there, really. It wasn't on point. Something about the way Chris McQuarrie does dialogue, character interactions and whatnot, I just really love. And that first one had it. So the idea of doing a TV series, it was interesting, I guess, to me. But I was a little bit nervous. One, because Alan Ritchson, who plays Reacher in this, well, he certainly has the build, which will satisfy the fans of the books. All I knew him from was Smallville, and while I'm a massive Smallville fan, I do a podcast about Smallville with a few of the guys. So yeah, love Smallville. He was never a strong point in Smallville for me. His acting was never quite up there. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt because Smallville's like over 10 years ago now when he was in that. So who knows? I went into this tentatively. I watched the first episode and I really wanted to watch the second episode. And then by the time I watched the second episode, I was hooked. This is it's kind of junk food television, I guess. Like it's not brilliantly written. There's quite a lot of heavy-handedness in it at times. A lot of signposting, a lot of dialogue that is very exposition heavy. Particularly in the last episode when the villains reveal their fiendish plot. It's almost literally Scooby-Doo level. In the last episode, there's a point at which, maybe the second to last episode, I'm trying to remember now it's the last. So the last episode starts off essentially with all the bad guys in one room, and Reacher, and they just literally exposition the heck out of everything they're doing, and you're just kind of like, would you really? Would you, given everything Reacher's done throughout the other 7 episodes? Because let's face it, in this, Reacher is a badass. He is the Terminator, basically. He looks like the Terminator. Ritchson actually would make a good candidate to follow Arnold Schwarzenegger in the role of the Terminator, now that I think about it. He would make a great T-800. He's a lot better here than he was back in Smallville. Now, I'm not going to make any claims that he's one of the best actors in the world, because let's just say he's perfectly cast for this. Everything that is required of him in the role of Jack Reacher, he is perfect for, particularly that size, the intimidation factor, the physicality that he's got, but also a certain dryness that the character has, a certain emotional lack. He's not one to kind of latch on to any kind of emotional ties. He's a drifter. He drifts from place to place, helps out where he can, because he's got a good heart deep down. But he's not one to make that many emotional ties. When things start getting a bit too mushy, a bit too emotional, he makes some kind of wisecrack to break the tension. Ritchson is perfect for that. When it comes to the more emotional stuff, if he's got to shed a tear, I will say, now I could be wrong on this, but there is a particular emotional moment in the last episode. Again, the last episode, where we see a tear roll down his cheek, and I swear it was CGI. I could be wrong, and my apologies to Richardson as an actor if I am wrong, but it looked CGI to me, and that for me is a big, oh yeah, no. So, like I say, not the best actor in the world, but he does have charisma. You know, in the tradition of all the great action stars, you know, your big beefcakes, you can do all the action stuff. The ones that worked, you know, your Schwarzeneggers, your Stallones, it didn't matter so much that they weren't the best actors, because what they had in bucket loads was charisma, and Richardson has that. What he lacks in the acting department, he can be propped up by the supporting characters. So the question there is, do we have a good collection of supporting characters? To which the answer is yes. So the story follows Reacher as he enters this town. He's there to meet his brother, and basically there's a murder there when he's in the town, and he gets embroiled in the investigation, even though half of the police force seems bent and don't want him there. And then you got a very small few, select few, who still don't want him there, but are kind of willing, begrudgingly, to work with him. One of those is the Sheriff Finley, played by Malcolm Goodwin, who I really love throughout all 8 episodes of this series. Whenever him and Reacher are together on screen, it has that proper buddy cop kind of vibe, like your Lethal Weapon kind of thing. You know, your mismatched pair. So you've got Reacher, who listens to blues music, which is traditionally, it's black music. It comes from a tradition of black folk singers, kind of, singing the blues, this, that, and the other. And then you've got this Sheriff Finley, who is a black man, who listens to whiter than white 80s rock music, like really crap 80s rock music. So the two of these guys are like, yeah, they're just chalk and cheese. But I love the fact that this black guy who looks like he's wound pretty tight, kind of lets loose in his car, doing a bit of air drumming to some really cheesy 80s whiter than white rock music. And then you've got Reacher, who's like the biggest white tank of a dude who's chilling out to all these kind of black blues singers. So the two make a pretty interesting pair when they're put together. They're very much opposites, and a lot of banter comes out of that. Willa Fitzgerald plays the other officer, Officer Roscoe, that basically teams up with Reacher. She's the first one to kind of get on his side. She starts off being a bit of a mediator between Reacher and the sheriff, kind of getting them to cool the heels a bit with each other, and in so doing kind of befriends Reacher. She's the first to see his good qualities, she's a badass woman. I think, again, given what I mentioned before about, oh, there goes my phone. Again, given what I said before about the heavy-handedness at times in the dialogue, I do think there are times in this where her being a tough woman is kind of spoken out in dialogue where it didn't need to be. There are times when Reacher will come to her rescue, and she'll say, "I don't need rescuing. I'm a strong woman," essentially, in those words. And it's just like, actually, given what we see her do, that's enough for us to know that actually this woman don't need rescuing by Reacher. She's got it covered. So yeah, there are times like that, as I say, where the dialogue can get heavy-handed. But the flip side is that actually these actors together, these characters together, are very enjoyable to watch. The series as well is very violent. The threats feel very real to me. And because I know, I've never read any of the Reacher books, but I do know that Reacher moves from town to town. Each book is a different story with different characters. And because of that, I always felt that the characters that I liked in this were at risk. There's a real danger there that characters I like could get killed off. Just from my knowledge of how the books kind of play out, the formula that they go by. So I latched on to this character, this Roscoe character, and all the way through, there's this sense of, will she make it, won't she? So the fact that I cared about these characters and the fact that the stakes do feel high because you know that, even without reading the books, that Reacher's not going to be sticking around, which means that to some extent these characters are expendable, which also means that to some extent that they could write them in such a way that you don't really give a toss, but you do, and that's what the series does really well. These extra little supporting characters that come in and team up with Reacher, you do care about them. Another Smallville alumni to appear in this series as well is Kristen Kruk, obviously most famous for playing Lana Lang in Smallville. Very different here. I'm sure the naysayers who always despised her character in Smallville will the first question they will ask will be, does she railroad Reacher keeping secrets? No, she doesn't. She plays a mother in this series who's just trying to keep her kids alive. I would say she's a weaker character to the Lana Lang character that I've seen her play. I've not seen her in much, but she's very much more your traditional damsel in distress, really needs saving, and to some extent it's a bit of a thankless role, to be honest. I would have liked to have seen this character have been given a bit more strength as the series goes on. Now she's only in 4 episodes, but her character and her husband character, they're very integral to the plot. So that they play a pretty big part in the first couple of episodes and a big part in the last couple of episodes. So but they are literally plot devices rather than fully fleshed out characters that I care about. They're there more to serve a purpose. Though, as I say, that doesn't mean that I don't like them. It doesn't mean I don't care about them. And again, I think given the violence in this, given that they show you just what some of the cartels that are involved with the scheme that's going on, the conspiracy that's going on, they show you what they do to people who betray them or who aren't doing as they're told, and it makes you feel nervous for characters who really are quite innocent or are embroiled in things not through their choice but because they've been forced. And so yeah, I like all that stuff. I like the fact that they make me feel for even periphery characters such as the one that Kruk plays. If I had another minor criticism, it would be that the villains throughout this are pretty one note. They may as well have neon signs above their heads saying villain, psychopath. There's one in particular. Well, there's a couple actually. There's a couple who they get in all up in like Jack Reacher's face as if they could take him, and you're just kind of looking at them thinking, dude, no chance. Like if a guy your size even punched a guy Richardson's size, you would just break your fist, quite frankly. They never feel like a threat until perhaps, again, going towards the last episode, when one of these characters, once you realise just how psychotic they are, it does hold a bit more weight. It does carry a bit more weight that even someone of that size wouldn't be threatened by someone of Jack Reacher's size. There's a particular story that a character, the main villain, when we get to the end and it's revealed who the main villain is, there's a final showdown, and he gives this story about when he went hunting for this rhino. And I thought it was a bit on the nose, to be honest. I thought it was a bit heavy-handed and kind of unnecessary to some degree. But it did reveal something about his character's mentality, which is that ultimately he is a hunter, and the reason he doesn't feel threatened by Jack Reacher is because he's the greatest prize. Someone like Jack Reacher is literally that rhino who, you know, needs to be hunted, and he will prove his mettle by taking him down. But that doesn't change the fact that, yeah, if someone like Reacher, someone like Richardson got hold of this guy, you're dead, dude. There's nothing you can threaten this guy with, particularly from a physical level. So there are a few moments, as I say, during the season when you have these smallish kind of, no one I'd want to mess with, but you know, if I was Richardson's size, it would be laughable if these guys were trying to threaten me. The series uses flashbacks as well, and one of the things that I don't mind when TV shows do this, you know, when a character will see something and it'll key them into a flashback that is, you know, relates to something that's going on in their life right now, and that's fine. But there's a whole series of these flashbacks across the course of the series, but they're linear. So as we go along, Reacher is seeing things that then take him to a flashback, and the flashback that he goes to is the next step in the series of events that happened in the past. So each event that it flashbacks to, it's in linear order. So to me, that's a bit like, when did that ever happen? You know, when do you see something, you're reminded of a particular incident, and then you go about your business, and then you see something that reminds you of the next step that came after that particular incident, and you do that across a whole series, and it becomes a little bit, yeah, when you think about it, that's a little bit silly. But hey ho, whatever. It's a device, you know, it's a storytelling device that allows us to see a bit about Reacher's past and kind of how he became who he was, and the relationship he had with his brother. I just think that personally, a better way to make those flashbacks feel a bit more organic would have them be non-linear. So you don't necessarily have to have this story where if you put all those flashbacks together in the order they came, you'd have like a short film essentially. Whereas, yeah, I think doing it in a non-linear way, jumping back into, would have been a much better way to do it, more realistic. I think the climax of the series as well, of the season, while it is satisfying, again, in that kind of junk food TV kind of way, it wraps everything up just a little too neatly. So as you go through the season, there are certain bad guys where you know that, oh, that bad guy is definitely the more personal kind of bad guy to this character, and this bad guy here is definitely would be, you know, if you've got to pair them up, they would definitely have the more personal connection to this good character. And then when you have the final episode, in which is a big showdown and everyone's facing each other, it just so happens that, yes, that guy fights this person, that guy fights that person, and it's all like, why is it whenever you have action films and you've got a main bad guy, they always manage to go into their den. The good guys manage to go into their den, cut down all the the chaff, all the periphery kind of villains, the grey suited Bond villains, kind of, you know, the henchmen, so to speak. They cut them down like that, boom, 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 and then they always have the final showdown with the one that they've got a personal connection to. It's never, you know, just straight in there, straight for the one that they really hate the most, boom, take them out, and then have to deal with all the peripheries. It always works that, yeah, like, what is that? What is the main bad guy always doing while these peripheries are getting taken out? Why does chance always seem to make it so that they're the last one standing? Things like that take away the believability for me, kind of take me out of it. But it's a trope of this kind of movie, of the action movie. You know, the last one standing is always the one you have the biggest personal connection to, but it's a bit too formulaic in that regard. Having said that, as I said before, the journey that you go on, mainly because of the characters, because of particularly those three lead characters, you know, Reacher and the two cops that he pairs up with. It's a very enjoyable ride, and I enjoyed it much more than I was expecting to. Despite the tropes, despite some of the heavy-handed dialogue at times, the action's really good. There's some great fight sequences, and I just, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I enjoy the fact that you don't have to come back essentially next season, or when we get to season 2. That's if they don't, you know, differ from the books in some way. You could come into season 2 without having seen season 1. You know, if that's the way they're going to adapt the books, a separate story each time with new characters, I like that. I think more TV shows should be like that, so you don't have to always commit to a 5-year, 7-year run or whatever. You can dip in and out. So, yeah, True Detective is like that. And it works for me personally, as someone who doesn't get to watch many TV shows. But yeah, I really liked this. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I would highly recommend it. Like I say, don't go in there expecting True Detective season 1. You know, I think season 1 of True Detective is like pinnacle of great writing for a detective show. But yeah, if you, this sits somewhere between the first, with regards to quality, it sits somewhere between the first movie and the second movie. You know, I still prefer the first film, but this is far and away better than the second film. And I like Richardson in the role. So 4 out of 5 from me, but what about you? Have you seen Reacher on Amazon right now? If so, what did you think about it? And how do you think it compares to the films? Leave your comments down below. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.